All right, as she said, I'm Jamie Doren. I've carved for a little while. I'm going into my 30th year of carving and running a business. I have some notes here. I'm extremely ADD, so I'm going to try to follow my outline best as possible. Ed's got some different photos, and I'm just going to kind of tell you how I got started and kind of give you my credentials on why I'm qualified to speak here real quick. But I got started basically, I grew up, my dad died when I was really young. My mom and my stepdad owned a bowling alley, and I grew up in the family business. I really started working on machinery and equipment really young, so I was really mechanically inclined, and I got really good with my hands. It's just a God-given talent, and blessed me with troubleshooting and all that kind of stuff. And after a while, I realized I wasn't cut to work with my parents. I had to find something else to do. So I went to actually work in corporate really young. I started out 16, 17 years old. I was working for Bowling Corporation of America, traveling throughout the United States, fixing bowling centers and bowling equipment. And I was also a self-taught electronics, so I could fix circuit boards. And at this time, this is when scoring was coming out. You know, you could see it up on the screen and all that stuff. And I grew up on when they had the screens. It was actually a little computerized printer run by solenoids, and you had to fix everything. It was a nightmare. But anyways, from there, I realized, you know, I was working for a corporation, and I was hiring and firing people at a very young age, and I realized I didn't like this because they treat people like numbers, and it was based on your performance, which was a number, and I thought that isn't the world for me, and so I basically quit doing that, and I went to work for the local co-op. I went back home in that area, and I went to work for a local co-op fixing small engines. In that, nobody wanted to fix chainsaws. Everybody was afraid of 2 cycles, so I started fixing the chainsaws. Well, that got boring because I was fixing like 40 chainsaws a day. So I had to figure out a way to test them, and I started cutting the ends off of logs, carving them into stuff. And from there it grew. People started wanting to buy the carvings, and eventually from there, you know, one of my bosses said, you know, we're just going to stop paying you. So you're going to have to start doing this full time. He gave me the push, kicked me out the door, was like, you're not going to get paid because you're making more money selling carvings. So I eventually started competing, and that took me into, well, the whole carving with the chainsaw. I eventually met Dennis Roger because I was doing a lot of stuff for Husqvarna. Me and Dennis Roger were both sponsored by Husqvarna for about 16 years. And, you know, we both won a lot of competitions. I think the last competition he carved in was a world competition in Minnesota, and I actually beat him that time. And I remember that because I shouldn't have won, but his wife said he was a sore loser. And we could sit around and giggle and laugh about that because Dennis was, you know, he was a very humble person, and he was a great guy, and he's since passed away. But, you know, I've gone on to win other competitions, and I'm to the point where I really don't want to compete anymore at this age, and I'm just, you know, raising my last kid. So. But anyways, that's how I got started, and eventually I found Ridgeway and started selling equipment. A lot of guys know me from selling equipment. I found out that 20% is not enough to take over my chainsaw carving, so I thought, well, I got to phase that out and keep carving because this is eating up too much of my time. So what I would like to do is tell you about some business things where I've had failures and successes. And I'm probably going to start out with my failures and all the bad part about being a chainsaw carver and bad mistakes I've made, and then I'm going to take you into how to even correct maybe some of the things some of you guys are doing. Maybe some of you aren't. Maybe some of you's got the perfect business already. But I'm just going to share with you in my life how my business went and how I was able to turn things around. when I did have failures or there were tough times and how I got through those times. One thing is becoming a carver, the first 5 years, we didn't have Ridgeway. We didn't have the internet. And, you know, you had, you know, if you knew a carver, that's about, you were lucky. I didn't. The first few years that I carved, before I even met Dennis Roger, I didn't have, I was just winging it. I mean, I carved a bear, it looked like a bear to me, people bought it. I look back now, it didn't look like a bear. It was scary. It had things sticking up, you know, you call them ears, but I look back now and, you know, I have friends that have pictures of my old bears, and I'm like, man, I'll give you $100 if you get rid of that. You know, it was awful. So you can start out at a very, you know, juvenile stage and work your way up. But there's a lot of technology out there now. You can go on YouTube and learn to carve. You can learn to do anything on YouTube, and a lot of that, you know, is because of Ridgeway. I mean, there's guys I've seen coming up. Look at Paul. He, you know, I think he said he's carving 3 years. When I was carving 3 years, I was still working with one saw. You know, I couldn't afford 2 saws, so let alone make money at it. The other part is once you do start making some money, it becomes a challenge of opening. You know, do you want to go into a business? Are you going to open a storefront? Are you, you know, what are you going to do? Where are you selling this stuff? You know, for me, when I first started, I just set it up next to our saw shop, or our saw display, and people would come in and see it and buy it. After that, you know, when I met Dennis Roger, then we started going to competitions, and we'd sell at competitions. Now, there's a lot of carvers here I know that go to the different competitions, and that's where they make a lot of their money. They'll sell carvings at competitions, they'll win competitions. That's where they're making a good amount of money. I never really, you know, I never made good money at competitions. My prices were too high. There were a lot of carvers, and I wasn't willing to come down on my prices. So I didn't make great sales. You know, I'd bring a truckload of carvings, I'd leave with a truckload of carvings, plus more, because I carved more there, and I just wasn't willing to take less for them. I felt that at that point, you know, this is what I had to have for that carving, I wasn't going to take less. And a lot of that I took from Dennis. You know, he stuck to his prices, and that's what I did. And let's see. You know, well, once you find a good outlet, I started selling at different shops, chainsaw carver shops. I go to their shops. I would carve a bunch of inventory, leave. They'd send me checks or call me back or have a bunch of orders. I'd go back there, and that's how I'd make my money. Eventually, I did open up a shop. And this was after, like, my first divorce. There's also a what I call the chainsaw carver curse. There's a lot of guys, and well, there's more women coming now too. But I didn't know any chainsaw carvers that hadn't been divorced. Like, every chainsaw carver I knew was divorced at least once. So this is already, at this time, I'm divorced once already. Let's see. When I did open up a shop, I got lucky, and the guy sold me the property for on a land contract. So he gave me 2 years to pay for the property, $13,000. It was 2.5 acres, great deal, right on the highway. I met Gary Patterson. Gary Patterson is another carver who's since passed away. And Gary Patterson introduced me to Brian Ruth and also Dean Short Talent Agency. So I started doing fairs. When I started doing fairs, I found out I could make a lot of money fast. I started doing fairs. That's all I did. And I met my second wife, got married. I was making probably 40 grand a month doing fairs. I'd leave in May, not come back till January. And I was just making a lot of money. I paid my property off in 2 weeks. and I was loving it. I was raising my daughter for my first marriage. She would travel with me. You know, it was good times. But slowly, you know, when you're traveling and you're married and you're not together all the time, it's hard on the marriage, and it's not a good life, and it's really hard. So that was my second divorce. So what came after that is a lot of depression. And that was 15 years into my career at the time. I spent two parts. I wrote my first book then. After that 15 years, I got divorced, and I started writing my first book, which was Chainsaw Carving a Bear. I spent the better part of 2 years in the hospital from doing fairs. The fairs was a thing that, for some guys, it's a great thing. You make really good money, but I ran it really hard. There's times I'd be up 3 days at a time just going from fair to fair. And the money, like I said, it was great, but the art is what was killing me. It was carving the same things over and over. I once did a fair for 12 days, never carved the same thing twice, carving 4 carvings a day. Left that fair, went to a 3-day fair. You can carve whatever you want, okay? I just left a 12-day fair. I couldn't find one thing the first day that I could carve. I was totally blank. I crashed. It wasn't, my mind just shut down. I mean, 3 days, you gotta come up with 12 carvings. I had just carved a buttload of carvings. I couldn't come up with 12 carvings in my head. I knew something was wrong. So, after this time in the hospital, shortly after, I met my third wife. And after being in the hospital and my shop was shut down and everything else, finances weren't as good as they used to be, because I wasn't going to go do fairs. And I still had some contracts that, you know, they wanted me back. So I had to honor those contracts. So I went, I did those contracts, and eventually I just got out of it. I had a few, and I just said, I don't want to do this anymore. If you want me back, I'll come back, but I really, I can't do it. So, and it was only a couple that, I still had to do. So, they were cool with that, and I went on to do other things. But here's the thing. Now, I was making all this money, and a lot of money, and I was used to living that way. Everything I had was paid off. I mean, everything was paid off. My property was paid off. I basically lived in my fifth wheel, and I'd crash at my mom's. My mom would help me take care of my daughter when I was out of town. But when I met my wife, it was like, wow, I really need a stable environment, so I'm going to build a house. But yet I didn't have a whole lot of money yet, but my credit and everything was good. I wasn't sure how I was going to pay for this house, but I had a shop and I sold carvings there. So I got a loan, built the house. Things went on. I was selling really good at my shop, but as most carvers know, winters are tough. They're very tough. And, all it takes is one winter to, linger on. Like last year, what was it here? 60 degrees, people were getting sunburns. Well, look at it now. Now it's a little bit longer winter. All it takes is 1 month, and you could be out on the street. So I had to figure out ways to make money when I wasn't doing fairs, and I didn't want to do fairs. So, that I could do. I was always good at trying to figure these things out. But the thing was, I just, I had a girlfriend now, and we were going to get married, we were going to have a kid. I had more financial responsibility, and I'm thinking, how the heck am I going to pay for all this?
Yeah.
And I'm not doing fairs, and I really didn't have that fair money. So I started carving really hard, and I started developing what I call the sculpture garden. I'm like, this is going to pull people in. I'm on a 4-lane highway. This is going to pull people in. So I built this sculpture garden and started carving big carvings, and that's all I would sell, was big carvings. And that worked great because the economy wasn't that great, and nobody was selling small carvings. All I heard on Yellow Forum, if anybody knows what that was carve smaller and cheaper, people will buy it. And I'm like, I can't, I need a lot of money, you know. So I'd get by selling big carvings. You know, I was getting $3,000, $5,000 for a carving, and this is 15 years ago. And I did it. I was able to do that. But we were still strapped with a lot of debt. And, you know, my wife had her debt from college and everything else. She had a bachelor's degree, and she went to a couple things through our church, and they basically made her feel like it was hopeless. And I'm running a business, and we're not paying the bills, but we still had a lot of debt that we had to get rid of. I had medical bills. She had medical bills. She had a daughter, and we were going to have a baby. So where's this money going to come from? I mean, I was making enough chainsaw carving, but I was making enough that in the winters I would have to go get another job. You know, I'd go weld and do whatever and keep going. But it got to a point where, you know, she kind of felt hopeless. You know, nobody, you know, we went to places like, okay, we need to get our finances in order. You know, there's got to be other carvers. I talked to Dennis Roguer, and I found out, you know, well, Dennis Roguer's finances weren't in the greatest order either. And I started thinking, is this a chainsaw carver thing? Like, you know, a lot of chainsaw carvers, you know, in the summer I make more than doctors and lawyers. But come winter, I'm trying to figure out, like, how to buy a can of beans. You know, what the heck? So, you know, I started thinking, this has got to be, you know, curse or something. There's got to be a way to do it without doing fairs, because I was dead set I'm not going to do fairs. I'm not doing fairs anymore. I can't handle that. Production carving, that I can't do that all the time. So what eventually happened was we got to a point that it was just hopeless. And I thought, well, you know, we're two hardworking people. She's got a job. I'm carving, and as long as we work hard, God is going to take care of us. And what we ended up doing is we found through our church a place called Crown Financial. It's a program you can take through your church, and so we went through those classes, and they really helped us be more responsible with the money that we were making in the off season. It made us be accountable, and we started talking to other people, and I met a few business guys that were part of a program called Urban Hope. And it's not everywhere in the country, but it was started by Reggie White. And his wife still runs it. Reggie White has passed away, but his wife still runs this thing called Urban Hope. And it's something that he put together for small businesses. And I thought, man, that's great. What is it all about? Well, this guy said, you know, I went through it, and I'm going to sponsor you through it, because it costs to go through it. And that's kind of the thing. It's kind of a pay-it-forward deal where you take somebody under your wing, and you help them out in business, and you sponsor them. And there's, you know, it's a really good class. It's like going through, I would say, like getting an MBA in half a year. You know, not taking, you know, 4-year or 2-year course, but it's like getting an MBA in half a year. So what I did is I went through those classes, and what they taught us was a lot of what I'm going to try to share with you here, but I do recommend trying to find something like this. It really, even if you've been carving a long time, if you've had struggles with, you know, winters like everybody else does, it really starts getting you to network with other businesses. But anyways, this program really started helping me out. It got me on a path to where I wasn't just sitting level wondering where the extra money was going to come each month. And you know, you can only pay up so much in the summer if you're behind on your bills. You know, what I found was a lot of carvers save all summer for the winter, or they're spending all summer trying to pay their bills from the winter. So you get to winter and you're broke again. So you have no money going into winter, so you go into debt all winter again, and it's an endless cycle. And the thing is how do we break that cycle? Not to mention try and come up with some type of retirement. And what I found was that through a bunch of my business failures, I mean, I've had jobs where even after I started getting on my feet, where I would make bad decisions. You know, I had bad decisions where I had a company who wanted 75 bears. And I carved them 75 bears. I got a huge $45,000 paycheck. And they're like, oh, we love it. We want another 175. I'm like, oh my God. I'm not gonna, I might as well go do fairs. 175 bears, same bear over and over and over. So I thought, I'm gonna be real smart about this. I'm a smart guy, I got technology on my side. I'm gonna build a CNC and I'm gonna have that machine carve bears. I'm gonna be doing other stuff and make tons of money. Well, the guy who built the CNC for me didn't do quite a great job. And I spent most of my time trying to get this thing to work. Ended up losing a contract and had to pay back $90,000. Now I'm right back in the hole again. Thinking, that was a dumb idea. Why did I do that? But, you know, again, if you don't keep trying things and keep moving forward, you don't get those kind of jobs. And those failures, you learn something from that. And what I learned was, you got to have enough time to plan these things. You got to learn to say no sometimes. You know, the 75 bears worked out fine. 175 bears, I could have said, no way, I can't meet that deadline. Instead, I saw it as a challenge and was thinking, yeah, I can get this done. Well, I could have got it done if everything ran perfectly and there were no snakes, but things are always going to go wrong. And you got to learn to say no sometimes. I run into clients now that they have a lot of money, and they come up to you, and at first I'm thinking, oh yeah, it's going to be like a $30,000 job, blah, 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 and yeah, it looks real simple, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, we want this, and we want that, and then they start adding to the project, and I'm like, okay, because I see dollar signs, okay. All of a sudden this is a $60,000 project I'm getting paid $30,000 for because I didn't say, wait, no, stop. That's more money. That's more money. I learned how to deal with people. These jobs come along, but you also have to learn to communicate with people because people will try to take advantage of you. Some people, I've had people where I've done jobs and they're like, oh, that's way better than I wanted, and tried to pay me more money. I don't do that either because I don't feel it's fair. I don't mind a tip, but I set out a price that job is worth, and that's what I want to get paid. And I figured out right. If I make a mistake and I underbid it, that's my fault. If you want to reward me, thank you is enough. Extra money is always good, but I just don't feel right about taking. I've had people offer me insanely large amounts of money for doing a great job, and I appreciate that, but a $50 tip for delivering is awesome. So from there, I just want to lay out a few things that I have been watching some of what some of the guys have been saying about business and different things, and one of the things I've never seen any of them say anything about is a business plan. When you go into business, I don't care if you're a chainsaw carver, you're a jeweler, if you're, Kentucky Fried Chicken, if you're a big place, you got to have a business plan. And one thing I learned through, Urban Hope is that, even the smartest guys and the dumbest guys, put them together, they're not going to go anywhere if they don't have a plan. You got to have a plan. You got to follow a plan. So you get a good business plan together, and you can find business plan things all over the internet, you can look them up, but I recommend getting good sources. There's a lot of really good sources for building a business plan. The problem is that guys, they build a business plan, they say, okay, I filled out this thing, I got this business plan. That doesn't mean that you have to follow everything in that business plan word for word. What it means is that this is my ideas, this is my dream, it's on this piece of paper. And as everybody knows, things change. And as the business climate changes, life changes, you may have to change that business plan. And it's just a thing to keep referring back to say, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, what's going on in my business. And we had these plans to do this, we didn't do that. Why did we do that? Go back and revisit that part of that plan, like we built a sculpture garden, but, we forgot to, do this part of the parking lot or this display or whatever. These are things we need to get done. And it helps you keep on track. It helps you with your marketing, it helps you with your internet, whatever way you want to run your business. Some guys are selling through stores, some guys are wholesaling, some guys are doing all internet. But you got to divide your time up, and it kind of keeps you on track. If you find out your business plan, like we wanted to do all these things, we can do all those things, we can carve enough things to hit all those places, but I don't know anything about marketing on the internet. And you've got to realize that, okay, maybe it's time to hire somebody to do that for you. You got somebody else taking care of that, you can carve and get that done. And that'll keep you from going in a hole, because if you're spending all your time marketing on the internet and you're not getting any sales, well, nobody's carving inventory for your shop or the other shops you're supplying, and you find out you're right back in a hole again. Another thing that came up that I've heard is health insurance. Well, I don't even want to go into health insurance, because right now it's a nightmare for everybody, I think. A health savings plan, there's a lot of HSA plans available and through the government, and I think that's probably a good way to go for most self-employed businesses at this point. But one thing I find that is concerning to me is that liability insurance. I find there's a lot of carvers that don't have liability insurance, and that's a quick way to end your career. Because if you want to go in the hole pretty fast, just have some little kid or somebody get a chip in the eye at a fair or a festival or an event, and you got to have liability insurance. Always cover your butt. And another way to do that is incorporated. There isn't too many carvers I know, like Bob King's, he's incorporated. I'm incorporated. It's a really smart thing to do to protect your personal assets. So once you've lost everything, you regained it, you don't want to lose it again. So you want to protect yourself. So incorporating is very, very important. I recommend talking to an accountant and a lawyer and taking care of that, because there's smart ways to do it, and it's also kind of complicated to do it correctly, because the other part is, if you're a husband and wife team, I think most of the best teams out there are husband and wife teams. Husband and wife teams seem to make the best money. But if you're incorporated, you want to make sure if something happens to you or something happens to your wife, that business isn't eaten up by the government, because the government can legally take away your business if it isn't left to your spouse, or it's not laid out in your incorporation papers. So you got to be careful about that stuff and be smart about it. Another thing that I learned, and I hope I'm not jumping around too much here, but I will ask questions later. But like I said, I'm ADD, so I'm all over. But
you're doing good.
One thing that helped me out a lot was counsel. And this is something you'll find, there's a couple books that I recommend. One of them is 3 Feet from Gold. If you ever
are just, you can get it on books on tape and all kinds of things. It's put out by the Napoleon Hill Foundation, which is another great place to look for information on business and just ideas. But if you're, kind of feeling like you're in a rut or whatever, I mean, things don't have to be going bad or anything, but they'd be going good, but you just want to keep moving your business forward. I always feel like if I'm not headed in a direction, if my business plan isn't moving me forward, if I'm not moving forward, if I'm not getting better at my carvings, I'm bored, I don't want to do it. I always got to be headed in some direction. I want to keep bettering myself. And I think on the most part, the human race, we always have a drive inside us. We want to keep getting better at what we're doing. The competition is always there. There's always going to be a better carver. There's always going to be this and that. But you've got to gauge yourself against yourself and always continuously work at getting better. This is a very interesting book. It's also one of the better books on tapes that I've heard. It's not super boring. You'll get some and the guy talks in a monotone voice and you're like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it through this thing. Like you'll fall asleep carving. But I really like to listen to books on tape while I'm carving. And this is a really good one. There's a lot of good ideas. It's pretty motivational. And it's got a lot of really good references. One, I'm not sure if I don't think it comes from this book, but it's another one. And it's a story of Mr. Honda. How he, and I kind of think of it related to chainsaw carving really easy because when I started chainsaw carving, people laughed at me. And Honda worked for Toyota. Mr. Honda worked for Mr. Toyota, and he was developing pistons. And they laughed at him. They were like, what are you doing? Stop wasting your time, whatever, And so in the end, he ended up borrowing money from Toyota and made the little Honda 50, which everybody knows, little Honda mini bikes and stuff. And eventually, that went well and everything else. And he started his own company and he borrowed some more money and he kept going. But people still laughed at him when he started it. When I first started chainsaw carving, people were like, "Are you serious? How do you make money doing it?" And people still come up to me now. I'm in places. They're like, "People buy this stuff." Like, what do they do with it? I'm like, hey, I don't know. I don't know what they do with it. I mean, you get a lot of weird questions. But that always inspired me that, you're talking about guys now that, Honda is a very huge corporation. But people laughed at him. And, he worked through it and kept doing, he knew his direction, he didn't give up. He just kept looking at it, and he became successful. The other book that I want to recommend is, which one should we take? How about You're Broke Because You Want to Be. This is a really interesting book. When I was really down and out, I started reading this book, and it's actually kind of funny. It's even good on books on tape, because this guy's been a millionaire and lost his money and a millionaire again, and lost his money and a millionaire again. And he just doesn't give up. It's like his attitude is, I don't care, I can make $1 million tomorrow. But he'll tell you, the story, and it's true. You're broke because you want to be. People will say, oh, I just want enough money to get by. So if I handed you $1 million right now, you wouldn't take it? If I bought your bear for $1 million, you'd say no. You'd take it. We'd all take it. If I could sell a bear for $1 million, I'd do it. So he really lays down, some really good concepts and how to get out of debt, and basically lays out, if you're hardworking, you're going to make money. If you think about it and you work hard, you're going to make money. He also has one which carvers will enjoy because we get a lot of stupid questions. And to the people, they're not really stupid, but it's people are idiots. I can prove it. It's actually hilarious, but it makes you think also about your own life. I always say we're we're the only animals that keep doing the same thing over and over and over and expect a different result. You know, it's like, if you don't change anything, you're gonna get the same result. And even though my parents owned a business and I grew up in business, they never taught me anything about finances. So I just kept doing the same thing over and over, working hard, putting my money into it, you know, making $40,000 a month. I should have a buttload of money in the bank. I don't have any money in the bank, you know. I got sick, I didn't have a bunch of money in the bank. And I should have. I should have had a ton of money sitting in the bank, but I was doing the same stuff over and over. Make the money, spend the money, oh, just go make more money, spend the money again. And keep doing that over and over and over. But what happens when that money isn't coming in and now you got a bunch of debt for whatever, you know? You have to change something. Did I give you another one?
The Napoleon,
Yeah, and the Napoleon Hill Foundation, you'll learn in 3 steps from Go of what that's all about. And it's a great foundation. It's something I plan on getting more involved in. But you know, there's guys in this foundation. We're talking guys who own Chick-fil-A, all these big franchises, and they have basic principles that they base their business on. And 3 Feet from Gold talks about a guy who was basically gold mining, had a lot of money, went in with the guy, and they weren't making any money, and they missed this vein of gold that was there. They were 3 feet from it, they cashed it in, said forget it. They sold off the whole mine and all the equipment to another guy for basically nothing. A couple days later, the guy's like, the gold ain't in that direction, you know. He makes a left turn and he's a billionaire. You know, never give up. And that's where it comes back to. I was talking about counsel, and counsel is something. It's like having a bunch of peers. It's like coming to Ridgeway and having people you can bounce your head off. But what I like to do is get involved in your local community and business leaders in your community, maybe a Rotary Club or the Elks Club or something where there's guys who are doing business. And, you know, become friends with guys that you can share. You know, you run into a business problem. Just because we're chainsaw carvers doesn't mean that we're that much different in business than other people. We have products to move, they got products to move, maybe they're moving products, maybe they're in the trades or whatever, there may be, you know, they have a lot of ideas, they've been in business, and you can share ideas with them. You can ask them questions, you get into a problem, hey, you know, I've been having problems with a certain store that I'm dealing with, you know, what's your recommendations, you know? And having somebody, you know, it could be other carvers that you can always call up and bounce things off of. But create a council, surround yourself with people or group that you can share things with, you can get information from. You know, that's one of the hardest things is, you know, everybody looks at another chainsaw carver as competition. But I don't carve the same bear Steven carves or, you know, Dayton. You know, we don't carve, it's not the same. It's not the same. It's not like, you know, I'm selling a Hyundai car and he's selling a Hyundai car. It's a lot different. You know, however, you know, there are a lot of similarities. I still have a hard time with the competition aspect. You know, we're at Ridgeway, there's 200 some carvers here. Is everybody selling something? You know what I mean? Because it's all different. People have different attitudes. So, I mean, you know, I've sold some stuff, Steven sold some stuff. I know everybody's sold, must be selling at least one thing, you know. But people want different things. So it's a good idea to have a council. I always have somebody to bounce things off to, go to. That's helped me a lot. You get into a problem that there's people who can always refer you to problem solving. once you know, have a business, you have your business plan set up, you got everything running good, you got a good product, you obviously wanna market it. You know, a lot of stuff nowadays is going to internet sales. Walmart is shutting down like 170 stores or something like that. You know, I think it's, is it Cranes or something like that, is shutting down 100 stores. You know, a lot of these, even the big guys are going to internet sales. I think that's a huge market. It's a market that I'm not actually hitting as well as I should be. And there's some guys here that are, you know, they do 50% of their sales on the internet. There's something there. They do it on Facebook. What I've done this year is I've actually hired a social media expert to take care of all my Facebook stuff and everything else. So over this next year, I hope to see that I'm getting more sales in Facebook and the internet and that kind of thing. If you look at my website, I try to put information up. All my information is old right now. Don't do that. Keep your information fresh. Mine is all pretty old information. I'm not real good at updating it. I've been doing it myself for years. I built my website myself. I do all that stuff myself. I don't, you know, that's not good. You want to keep your newest, freshest stuff up there, push your sales. I try to, you know, put nice stuff on my website, but I don't want to put a lot of great stuff on there because there is a lot of carvers that go around and they look at it, or people, and they're like, oh, I want this bear, and they'll take it to another carver. And I try to avoid that because nobody carves like you carve. You know, it's usually, we all carve differently. We all have our own style. And if somebody comes to me and says, hey, can you carve this? I'll be like, I can carve my version of that. I can't carve that, and I'm not going to copy that, but I'll do like my version of it. And, you know, contact this guy. If you want that piece, contact that guy and get that from him. But a lot of people don't want to pay shipping, and shipping really isn't all that bad, especially when you're talking about buying a, you know, $1,000, $2,000 piece. $300 in shipping isn't really anything in my eyes. So, but I think as far as your website, like I just said, you know, we've hired somebody who's going to take care of all that stuff for us now. After 30 years, I finally broke and decided my time's better off carving. And there, you know, there's so much to it nowadays that someone who specializes in it can do a lot better job than I can to make sure that it gets out there.
You're good.
Good.
Whatever you want to do.
Other than that, I mean, I'd just like to recap a little bit that, you know, one of my biggest problems was always being a middleman. I'd get into situations where, you know, I'd be the middleman for a project. Try to stay out of that. You know, Mountain Mike brought up something yesterday, feeding other carvers, you know, like feeding them jobs and giving carvers jobs and different things. One thing you want to remember is, if you do that, they come to your shop. That's your reputation. So be careful who you give the job to. I've done that many times, but, you know, I've also had some blowback from it. You got to be careful. You know, it's nice if you can pass work along if you're too busy, but also remember it's your reputation. And if people want to wait, you know, that's work for the future. So that's a good thing. And learn to say no. I mean, I've gotten into a lot of bad situations where I've had to pay back thousands and thousands of dollars because I didn't say no. I got thrown in the middle of something. You know, both guys made money, and I was the guy holding the bag. So, you know, you can always say no. Move on. But if you're getting into business, or there's people out there who want to go full-time carving who's not full-time, you wanna go full-time, start with a business plan, start breaking it down. It'll tell you if you're ready or not. You get your finances in order, you'll figure out your finances, what your rent's gonna be, it breaks it all down. A business plan, if you're running a business without a business plan, in my opinion, that's the dumbest thing you can do. You need a business plan to run a business, and everybody who's successful in business will tell you that. If you go for a loan for a business, they wanna see a business plan. You know, you wanna build a building for your business, they wanna see a business plan. Your whole future depends on your business plan. After that, it's all a lot of hard work. So, anybody have any questions?
Why did you decide to incorporate versus doing like an LLC?
Well, that is incorporating. LLC is incorporating.
Okay, so it is
Yeah,
LLC.
yeah.
Okay.
And that's what we did. And actually, we just did that last year. And I waited a long time for several different reasons. Because of, with our business plan and where we wanted to take the business, we were a little confused about certain aspects of where we wanted to go and what direction we were headed. And, if we were gonna live in California, if we were gonna live in Wisconsin, the laws in every state are different. So when you figure out all that stuff, that's why I say you need to talk to, not necessarily a lawyer, but at least an accountant. And then from there, you can go and get, advice from a lawyer to write things up. And the other thing is an accountant can be a valuable asset, because most accountants, did I say lawyer or accountant? But anyways, accountants are valuable assets, because if you get a good accountant, most of them are financial advisors, and they're concerned, if you get in with somebody good, they're concerned about what happens to your money. And so it's a good person to have for counsel, to be, your accountant. I've had bad accountants before. I've had accountants where I had one accountant who was a great accountant, got really busy, his business grew way too much, and I had to go and find a different accountant, because it just seemed like he was going with bigger and bigger clients, and I was still a little guy, and, he just didn't have time for me. And so I felt I needed a little bit more attention to help get my finances in order. I mean, we were a mess, and it wasn't good. And with making bad decisions, I mean, in 1 year I had to pay $70,000 back to one company and $90,000 to another. Now, I don't know, that's a buttload of money, and so I had to work that out, and I did. But I wouldn't have done it without help, and there was nobody who was saying, oh yeah, here's $70,000, man, get paid back, that wasn't happening. So, you have to protect yourself. And lucky enough, I've never been sued for any accidents or anything else, as far as like, from a liability standpoint, but I've always had liability insurance. I've always had liability insurance. And it's not bad, for a year, it's like $700. I mean, that's, in the big scheme of things, that's cheap, because a lawyer's gonna cost you more.
If you're gonna do jobs in certain areas, you've gotta show them your certificates.
Yeah, in municipalities, like if you're doing commercial stuff, they're gonna want a liability certificate that you're covered, and they probably have you write it up a certain way so that anybody around there is covered. Any other questions?
Talk about vehicles.
Vehicles?
Yes.
Oh,
Overstate toilets and stuff on
yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
it.
TJ? TJ asked me a question last night about vehicles, and DOTs, and it's state by state. It's really a gray area right now, but you start putting your name on the side of your truck, like I have nothing on my truck anymore. I used to, but I don't put anything on my truck anymore. And I got pulled over for the first time in Iowa, like 3 weeks ago. And it was basically, he was wondering if I needed a DOT number. I'm like, well, you know, my thought was, well, you're a state trooper, I don't know, do I need one or not? But he couldn't answer me. He's like, it's a really gray area. And I was overloaded, and I had machinery in the back of my truck, and that's what his concern was, that I was hauling machinery for somebody else. And, you know, after I explained to him, I got a really good deal on this, you know, and, you know, it was $500, it's an $8,000 machine, I couldn't pass it up. You know, he was like, well, that's, okay, well, as long as that's cool, but please check into getting a DOT number. It's a huge gray area.
DOT, over 10,000 pounds, or you make money with it.
Right.
If you're hauling over a 10,000 pound trailer, it's supposed to be DOT. If you put your name on it, DOT.
Yep.
If you pull it with a camper, they can go to hell.
But now there's a, in some states, you can drive a semi. You put a refrigerator in it, you can call it an RV.
It's gotta have a jar too.
Right.
But,
Right. But you know what I'm saying?
There's a lot of
It's a
rules.
huge gray area, and even the you know, even the troopers and everybody say the same thing.
They don't know shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
But
found a loophole in
the
New
rule
York.
of thumb is 10,000 pounds. If it's a dually,
It's actually 10,001, not two.
yeah. If it's a dually, they consider it commercial. You have to put commercial tags on it.
In New York, it
That's
is, but not in every state.
Yeah. But
That's where the
federal is
problem was.
10,000.
Yeah. Because I drive a dually, and that's where, I mean, it's a gray area. In some states, they can pull you over and it's 10,001 pounds. I know Vegas, 10,001 pounds, you gotta have a tag to go through there if you're hauling commercially. What's commercially? Now, I will tell you, okay, when you give a piece to an auction, you like people come in and they want donations all the time, and I donate a piece. You're only allowed to deduct your materials. You can't deduct the cost of the piece. You're only allowed to deduct your materials because you're an artist. So my thing is, you know, if we're an artist, how come we can't get the same deductions as other businesses? And then why are we treated like other businesses? It's kind of really gray area being an artist, and also, you know, the DOT regulations. So you gotta be careful, you gotta check what's going on out there.
Even the small trailers, just a little, you know, 3x10s or 5x10s or whatever. In some states, you don't have to have a tag.
Right,
But if you go out of
Wisconsin.
state, they're gonna wanna see a tag.
Yeah.
So
I've got
always
pulled
get-
over for that. Wisconsin, we don't have a tag. You go to Illinois, pulls me
Right.
over, looking, he's like, I'm from Wisconsin, we don't license our trailers. Well, you're not in Wisconsin.
Same thing Kentucky.
Yeah.
Kentucky doesn't license, but you go out of state, you gotta have it.
Yeah.
Brakes,
So always
Pardon?
brakes on trailers. Some states, everything, South Dakota, everything has brakes. Other states is 2,000, other states is 3,500.
And that's the thing, is if you're doing fairs and festivals and shows, you need to check the regulations, because you could be driving illegally.
They get really pissy about that.
Yes. So if that's it, I'm